My name's Owen. I'm 31 years old, an amateur musician, and as of a few weeks ago, the official black sheep of my extended family, not by some criminal record or scandal, but because I have the audacity to keep to myself and not kiss up to the loudest voices in the room. Growing up, I always played background to the stars of the family, the cousins with trophies, perfect hairlines, and parents who hovered like PR agents. Meanwhile, I was the weird one with the guitar. I was okay with that, honestly. But this story, it changed how I see all of them, and how they now see me. It started about 6 months ago when I got an invite to my cousin Alyssa's wedding. Alyssa and I were never close. She was 3 years older and had a way of smiling with her mouth while rolling her eyes with her soul. Still, we were family. She used to call me Owen the Oblivious because I once tried to give a toast at her sweet 16 about how kind she used to be as a kid. She interrupted it with a fake cough and later told me, "You made it sound like I'd been adopted from a monastery." But hey, family forgives, right? The invite itself was off. It came 2 weeks later than everyone else's. I only realized that because my cousin Jenna posted a photo of her RSVP on Instagram with the caption, "It's happening," timestamped 15 days before my envelope even hit the mailbox. I brushed it off. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they ran out of stamps. But something in my gut felt off. Still, I took it seriously. I didn't just click the RSVP link. I called Alyssa, told her I was honored, asked what they needed. She sounded distracted but said, "Just bring yourself. You don't have to try so hard." Then she laughed and added, "Unless you want to sing or something, but maybe skip the sad cowboy vibe this time." That's when I got the idea. I wasn't going to sing, but I did want to give them something special. I own this vintage Fender Stratocaster I bought at an auction a few years back. A beat-up sunburst body with decades of charm and character. I cleaned it up, polished it, and spent weeks hand-painting the back with their wedding date, names, and a quote from one of Alyssa's favorite songs, "You are the best thing that's ever been mine." I even had it signed by 2 local artists who sometimes toured with bigger acts. I custom-built a display stand, packed it in a soft velvet case. And I was proud of it, because, for once, I thought maybe I wouldn't be background noise. Maybe I'd matter. The wedding was at this fancy country club just outside town. White chairs, ivy arches, live harpist, everything dripping with effort and expense. I wore my only real suit, tucked the guitar carefully in my trunk, far away from the gift table until the reception. When I arrived, the valet gave me a long look, probably wondering if my dusty sedan had taken a wrong turn. I handed him the keys, kept my chin up, and followed the signs to the guest area. That's when I saw it. My name, scribbled in black Sharpie, on a paper tent folded awkwardly in half, tucked behind a pillar marked Overflow. The word wasn't subtle. It was printed, laminated, and attached to the side of a faux marble column with a little gold arrow pointing inward, like I was a piece of luggage that needed stowing. There were already a few people sitting there. 2 ex-boyfriends, yes, plural, a great aunt who once got banned from bingo night, and a childhood bully of mine, Greg. Greg, who used to spit gum into my guitar case in middle school. I blinked, looked around. Maybe there was a mistake? But no. Across the way, near the center, were round tables with engraved place cards. Family names. Floral centerpieces. Even Jenna's golden retriever had a tiny floral collar tucked under a chair. I stood there, frozen. My hands clenched and unclenched. My jaw tightened. And then I heard it, Alyssa's mom, my Aunt Dana, laughing just a little too loud. "Honestly, Owen should be grateful we even invited him," she said, fanning herself with the program. I told Alyssa he'd probably come with one of those moody breakup ballads and scare the kids. I didn't even know she'd seen me, but she had, and she didn't care. I sat down anyway. For 15 minutes. I stared at the menu, drank some lukewarm water, and watched the waiters deliver champagne to every table but ours. I told myself I was overreacting, that it wasn't about me, that this was her day. But then the music started, and the DJ welcomed the bride's beloved inner circle to the dance floor, and Greg got up with a smirk and walked toward the center. Greg. I stood up, calmly, walked out to my car, opened the trunk, took out the guitar and its case, walked back in with slow, deliberate steps and headed straight for the gift table, right beside the 3-tier cake, the money box, and a silver envelope marked from the Andersons. I unzipped the case, lifted the guitar gently from its lining, turned it around so everyone could see the artwork, the shimmer of gold ink, the hand-drawn roses curling around the quote. Then I said, just loud enough to cut through the music, Didn't know front row seats were reserved for people who brought nothing. The DJ's music cut off mid-beat. A clatter of silverware dropped somewhere. Heads turned. My aunt went pale. Jenna gasped. Greg just blinked like someone had unplugged his brain. And then I walked. Straight out the door. Down the steps. Into the parking lot. The last thing I heard before I closed my car door was a shout. High-pitched, panicked, laced with confusion. Owen, wait. It was the groom. Running. In his tux. Toward me. I didn't drive off right away. The engine was running. The guitar case laid gently on the passenger seat like it was something alive, something hurt. My hands were on the wheel, but my eyes were locked on the rearview mirror. I could see him, Ben, the groom, jogging across the lot in shiny black dress shoes, dodging rose petals and dodging glares from guests who were still trying to understand what had just happened. He looked ridiculous. Jacket flapping, boutonniere half-tilted, face twisted in a blend of concern and disbelief. I rolled down the window just enough to hear his breathless voice when he reached the car. Owen, man, what was that? I didn't answer at first. I watched him lean on the door like he had any right to steady himself there. His tie was loose, and I saw a smear of frosting on his sleeve. He looked like a kid who'd knocked over the cake and was still hoping no one noticed. You knew about the seating, I said flatly. His eyebrows shot up. What? No, I didn't. I didn't know you were behind a pillar or whatever, man. Dana handled all of that. She said you'd be at a family table. I just looked at him. Long enough for the silence to start curling at the edges. Greg, I said. Greg had a centerpiece. You know what he did to me growing up. Ben sighed. Look, I didn't make the list, okay? It was chaotic. Alyssa wanted certain people near her. Her mom insisted on others. I just showed up for the cake tasting. I gave a short laugh, cold and sharp. Right. So you knew Greg would be there, but not me. Got it. His face shifted, just slightly. He looked cornered, and suddenly I saw it. That same blank guilt my family wears whenever they know they messed up but don't want to take the full hit for it. We didn't think it would matter, he said, finally. I mean, you don't even talk to most of them. You keep to yourself. You don't do the group chats, the reunions. You're not really in it, Owen. That hit harder than I expected. Not in it. Like I was some optional extra. Like I wasn't part of the same family tree, just a dusty branch that could be pruned without anyone blinking. And yet, I said slowly, tapping my fingers on the wheel, I'm the one who spent 3 weeks customizing a guitar for you too. Not Greg. Not any of the cousins with their crumpled gift cards and Instagram stories. Ben opened his mouth, then shut it. I rolled the window down a bit more. You could have said something. A heads up. A text. Anything. I thought you wouldn't come, he admitted. Alyssa said, look, man, she thought you might make it awkward. After your toast at her birthday, and that Thanksgiving where I told your mom to stop calling my music a hobby? I cut in. Where I asked her not to bring up rehab stories at dinner when I wasn't even in the room to defend myself? He shifted uncomfortably. You know she's just blunt. No, I said, she's cruel. And Alyssa lets her be. Another long pause. The sounds of the wedding were faint in the background now, music starting again, laughter trying too hard, the hum of conversation adjusting itself like a suit too tight at the seams. Ben looked at me with something that might have been regret if I squinted hard enough. She didn't mean to hurt you, he said. None of us did. I stared straight ahead, fingers tightening on the wheel. You don't get to decide that. He sighed. Look, man, if you want to bring the guitar back in, we can fix the table. We can. It's not about the table, I said, voice flat and low. It's about never being more than a background act to you people. You only remember I exist when I'm useful. Otherwise, I'm the weird cousin. The overflow. He didn't respond to that. Didn't have to. Because it was true. I took one last look at him, standing there in the lot, sweat now beading at his temple despite the cool breeze, and I saw the realization hit. Not all at once, but in slow motion. Like a guy watching a train leave the station just as he finally decided to get on board. I reached over, zipped the guitar case shut, and put the car in drive. Ben stepped back instinctively, like he didn't quite trust what I'd do next. And I didn't speed off. I didn't burn rubber or throw up gravel like a movie scene. I just eased away, quiet, slow, controlled. The way you walk out of a room you know you're never walking back into. The last thing I saw in the mirror was Ben turning toward the venue. His hands were in his pockets, head bowed like he was already rehearsing how to spin the story. Maybe to Alyssa, maybe to Aunt Dana, maybe even to himself. But I didn't care. Because I wasn't going back in. I had something better planned, and it was already in motion. I didn't go home. Not immediately. Instead, I drove to my studio, a converted attic above a bike repair shop I rented for cheap. It smelled faintly of old tires and varnish, but it was mine. My little sanctuary. The walls were covered with mismatched acoustic foam panels, faded gig posters, and scribbled lyrics from nights when sleep wasn't an option and silence felt too loud. I placed the guitar carefully on the workbench, like a friend who'd been dragged into a war it didn't ask for. I stared at it for a long while. All that effort, all those hours. The lettering I painted, the brush strokes layered in gold leaf, the fretboard polished until it reflected the overhead bulb. I had wanted it to mean something, to be remembered. A piece of me left behind on someone else's best day ever. But now, it was just proof of how much I'd misjudged them. I didn't cry. Not then. I'm not the dramatic sobbing type. My pain runs quieter in clenched teeth and late-night drives, and music played too loud for the hour. But I felt it. That bitter little seed blooming in my chest, the realization that some people only pretend you matter when it's convenient. I thought about what Ben had said. You're not really in it. That was the line. Not the pillar seat. Not Aunt Dana's comment. Not even Greg's smug centerpiece. That line stuck, because it was something I always suspected, and now I knew. And if I wasn't in it, then I didn't owe them anything anymore. That night, I called in a favor. A friend of mine, Caleb, runs a local newsletter and social blog, kind of a digital town square. Weddings, events, little exposés on shady council members, and a whole section dedicated to highlighting artists. I asked him if he'd still be interested in that write-up he once wanted to do about my custom instruments. He said yes, immediately, enthusiastically. Perfect timing, I told him. I've got something with a story behind it. Just need a photographer. 3 days later, the article went live. When art isn't enough, a musician's gift that wasn't good enough for the family table. It featured high-res shots of the guitar, the hand-painted design, a breakdown of the story, names omitted, of course, and a heartfelt piece about how we often pour ourselves into people who never bother to look up. Caleb was a magician with words. He didn't make it petty. He made it powerful. But I wasn't done. Because if they thought I'd just vanished quietly, they hadn't been paying attention. Alyssa and Ben's honeymoon was a week-long cruise in the Mediterranean. I knew because my cousin Jenna posted every second of it to her story. Champagne on the balcony, towel animals on the bed, endless seafood platters with captions like, "My fave couple deserves this forever." Meanwhile, the wedding photos went up on the photographer's website, a curated selection for friends and family to download. Everyone tagged, everyone smiling. And in the corner of one photo, behind a large floral arrangement, you could just barely see me. One blurry figure behind the pillar. I took a screenshot. Then I went to Etsy. I paid a seller to make a set of glasses engraved with Overflow Guest number 27 and sent them anonymously to Alyssa's registry address with a note, "For the next time you run out of tables." Or gratitude. I sent another package to Aunt Dana. A small velvet box with a business card inside from a local etiquette coach. I didn't include a return address. Just a sticky note that read, "Blunt doesn't mean cruel. Thought you might want to learn the difference." Petty? Maybe. But there was something oddly satisfying about watching Jenna post a story 2 days later of Dana ranting in her kitchen, holding the box in one hand and muttering something about entitled little artists with too much time on their hands. She didn't know I saw it. She didn't know Caleb sent me the screen recording. They still hadn't reached out. No apology. No explanation. But then, one afternoon, just as I was locking up the studio, I saw the missed call. Ben. And a text right after it. "Owen, call me. It's about the article. Alyssa's furious. We need to talk." I didn't answer. Instead, I sat on the edge of my desk, phone still in hand, and waited. 3 hours later, another text arrived. "Why would you go public with this? Now the venue won't even repost our wedding. Still no sorry. Still no ownership. Just panic that their image was being chipped." So I sent back a single sentence. "You were worried about front row seats. Now you get to see what it's like when the spotlight shifts." And that's when the real unraveling began. Because one thing my family's always valued, more than kindness, more than connection, is appearance. And they never expected someone like me to challenge that. Not publicly, not effectively, not without raising my voice, but with facts, with presence, with art that finally got noticed. And the best part? I was just getting started. I gave it a week, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see if any of them, Alyssa, Ben, Aunt Dana, even Jenna, had it in them to say the words I'd waited for my entire life. We were wrong. You mattered. We treated you like you didn't. They didn't. Instead, they went quiet. Not apologetic quiet. Just strategic quiet. The kind where everyone's waiting for the fire to burn out on its own so they can pretend it never happened. But it didn't burn out. Because something changed after that article. People reached out. People I barely knew. Other musicians. A woman from California who ran a nonprofit that gifted instruments to at-risk youth. A teacher in Kentucky who asked if he could share my story with his students as an example of why doing something with heart matters more than being popular. One guy, a luthier from Texas, sent me a voice message saying, "Man, I've made 100 guitars and cried over maybe 3. Yours is one of them." It was surreal. The kind of surreal you don't expect when you've spent most of your adult life being talked over at dinners or pitted in group chats. And it didn't stop there. A local gallery contacted me. They'd seen the article and wanted to commission a series of emotional builds, instruments that told personal stories. They gave me a 6-month residency, full funding, a showcase at the end of the year. Suddenly, the attic studio wasn't big enough for the life that was starting to grow inside it. And here's the kicker. A few days after the article hit its peak traction, Jenna, who always considered herself the unofficial family publicist, posted a half-hearted, "Let's all support our cousin Owen's art" story on her page. I guess someone reminded her that social clout can't survive without public empathy. The comments underneath were brutal. One read, "Supporting family after you humiliate them at your wedding? Bold move. Is Greg doing PR now too?" Another, "Didn't realize Overflow Guest was a seating category. Is that next to uninvited or just behind forgotten?" I didn't reply. I didn't repost. I didn't even like the post. That silence was louder than anything I could have typed. And I thought that would be the end of it. But then 2 weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a printed letter. Single-spaced. 4 paragraphs. Signed by Alyssa. "No, dear Owen. No apology. Just a long-winded explanation about how emotions were high, and her mother had the best intentions, and how it was never meant to make me feel excluded." Then the line that sealed it. "I hope we can move past this now. It's exhausting having our family torn apart over one misunderstanding." One misunderstanding. As if I'd tripped over a place card and hallucinated a lifetime of being shoved to the background. As if I hadn't watched her smirk while her mother snubbed me in public. As if I hadn't been seated behind a literal architectural column while the guy who ruined my childhood got centerpieces and champagne toasts. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I folded it in half, put it back in the envelope, and wrote 3 words across the front in black Sharpie. "Return to sender." I didn't even put a stamp on it. Just walked it to the mailbox outside her office building because, yes, I knew exactly where she worked. Jenna had tagged it 100 times. And when I dropped it in, I felt it. That deep exhale that comes when something finally leaves your chest for good. Still, I wasn't done. There was one last thing I needed to do. One last bow on the package. The gallery's opening night came fast. Word had spread, thanks to Caleb's article, local buzz, and a few influencers who'd picked up the story. The room was packed. Glasses clinked, music played softly, and people wandered between the displays, each one spotlighting a different instrument with a placard explaining the meaning behind it. Mine was the centerpiece. The wedding guitar stood on a custom pedestal beneath warm, golden lights. I didn't title it Overflow. That was too easy. I titled it Reserved for Someone Who Cared. And right beneath it, in small cursive print, the plaque read, "Hand-painted, fret-burnished, vintage Stratocaster. Intended as a wedding gift. Reclaimed as a reminder, worth is not determined by seating arrangements." People stopped, stared. Some even teared up. A few asked if the couple ever got the guitar. I smiled. "They did," I said. "Just not in the way they expected." I was getting ready to close up when I noticed a familiar figure by the far wall, dark curls, stiff shoulders, too much perfume. Aunt Dana. She hadn't spoken to me in over a year. I assumed she'd been dragged there by curiosity or ego, or maybe both. She didn't say a word, just looked at the guitar, lips tight, jaw working like she was chewing something bitter. Then she turned to me and said, "You embarrassed this family." I didn't flinch. I leaned in slightly and replied, "No. I showed people what you did when you thought no one was looking." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being dramatic." I chuckled softly. "And you're being forgotten." That was the last time I saw her. Alyssa never reached out again. Neither did Ben. But it didn't matter anymore. Because I stopped measuring my value by how many seats were saved for me. I stopped trying to fit into a table that was never built to include me. I built my own. I filled it with artists, friends, mentors, people who saw me not as a background act, but as someone worth listening to. The guitar still sits in the gallery, on rotation every few months, and it's been featured in 3 national publications now. When people ask if I regret not leaving it with the bride and groom, I tell them the truth. No, because what I gave them was temporary. What I reclaimed, that was forever.